Alright, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time you're tuning into this video, just make sure that it is good. My name is Game Boy Rob, and today we have another champion reveal. Looks like today is Sion, who we saw in the book in the trailer for this expansion, right? We also saw Senna and Xerath in that little book. We have seen Senna. We've seen Senna be revealed already. We're now getting Sion revealed. The only two champions we have yet to see that were in the trailer are Ziggs and Xerath. So it seems likely that those are the two champions that we're getting tomorrow and the day after. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let's look at Sion. I have not seen this trailer yet. I have no idea what Sion does or what any of the Noxus cards do, but I am excited to find out. And with that, let's see what these cards do. Let's see what these cards do, shall we?
I hunger for battle.
Sion. Hold on, let me turn that up.
I feel the blood.
Ooh, he's a big boy. Oh, he's a big boy. All right. Sion. 7 mana. He's got Overwhelm. That's not surprising. 7 mana, 3/6. When I'm discarded, grant your strongest ally Overwhelm and place me into your deck. Strongest ally Overwhelm and place me into your deck. I have +1/+0 for each card you've discarded this game. Wow. But a maximum of +7, so he can get to 10. And then he levels up when you've discarded or summoned 35 plus power? What the heck?
And coursing through me. Battle calls. Death follows.
Ah, okay. Okay, and there must be other things that... Interesting. So we're getting some discard synergy. Some weird discard synergy. Like discard synergy that we've never gotten before. Ancient Warmonger. 5 mana, 5/5 with Overwhelm. When I'm discarded, grant your strongest ally +2/+0. Huh.
I wear the crown and bear its burden.
Bury them in bones.
With me, Knights of Demacia!
Alright, Radiant Strike, okay.
Come out and die.
Okay.
Demacians, fight for your king!
Fight for your king!
How many sharp?
Alright, Roar of the Slayer. 3 mana, fast speed. To play, discard a card, kill the weakest enemy. Oh, that's a good card. Oh, wait a minute, that's a pretty good card. Oh, hold on.
Things must I kill. The meek shall not prosper.
Rule well, my son.
Okay.
King's gods, I'll butcher them all.
Pretty good. All right, Sion. 7 mana, 10/6 with Overwhelm. So he's basically a Darius, but for 1 more mana, so he better do more. Last Breath. Summon Sion Returned. When I'm discarded, grant your strongest ally Overwhelm and place me into your deck.
Death had its chance.
This isn't even his final form!
Away with you.
Not even death can stop me.
Oh, does it rally? Oh my god, he rallies? When he dies?
Victory is a taste
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right, let's see what the rest of the cards do. Take a look at those. We'll take a look at those over on deck. So that's really cool. That's really flavorful for what Sion does. So in League of Legends, Sion has this cool ability. When he dies, he like sort of undies, but he can only like be around for a little while, and he keeps punching stuff. So they brought that in a really interesting way. In this game, when he dies, he becomes ephemeral and rallies, I think, if I read that right. When I'm summoned to rally and he's ephemeral. That's really cool. That's a really cool design. I like that a lot. So Sion, you've discarded or summoned 35 plus power. Okay. So you don't have to discard stuff to level him up. You just have to summon big things. But it doesn't work if you buff big things, right? You specifically have to play them as they're already big. Like playing Elixir of Wrath, for instance, or Might, does not progress Sion's level up. But playing Savage Reckoner, progresses him by 7. Also, discarding Savage Reckoner progresses him by 10. Interesting. And he himself is okay with being discarded. Sort of. All he does is grant your strongest ally overwhelm. He doesn't, grant any stats, right? If you discard Sion with, Draven's Axe or whatever, all that happens is that something, probably Draven, in that scenario, right? Probably Draven in that scenario gets overwhelm, and that's it. If this said +1/+1 in overwhelm, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that's worth discarding Sion. But just overwhelm, I don't think I want to discard Sion usually. Discard cards. The thing about discard cards is they're really hard to use. It's really hard to use discard cards and not run out of cards in your hand. That's all right. And then he levels up. No, he has +1/+0 for each card you've discarded, which is different than his level up, right? So I looked at this and I thought Vi, right? Vi levels up once she's struck for 10, and then she has a separate ability where she gains power. Sion gets attack regardless of his level up. But when he levels up, he goes to 10 regardless of this, right? So this little line right here, this second line of his level 1, is almost irrelevant, right? What matters is leveling him up, right? If you can get him if you can fulfill this requirement, he just goes to 10 anyway, and this stops mattering. This only matters if he's at level 1. Once he gets to level 2, it's just, he's just 10, no matter what he was before. Okay. All right. I think it's last breath. When I'm summoned, rally. Boy, he hates Minimorph, but if you kill him any other way, right? If you kill Sion any other way, Sion just gets to smack your opponent for 10. But if he gets, Minimorphed or Will of Ioniad or Fallen Cometed or anything like that, then you don't get anything, which is unfortunate. That's okay. This is pretty cool. And then his champion spell is Roar of the Slayer. To play, discard a card, kill the weakest enemy. This card right here, Roar of the Slayer, is actually massive, right? That's actually sick if you have something good to discard. Well, even if you don't, right? Because Sion likes it when you discard big things. So there are a lot of things in this game. That say, do X to the weakest unit, usually kill, right? Kill the weakest ally, kill the weakest 2 allies, and usually they're pretty bad. But none of them are a fast speed spell, right? They're, you can think of Rasa is an 8 mana creature unit follower that says, play skill. If you've lost 2 units this round, I kill the weakest 2 allies, right? Or the weakest 2 enemies. But that's a unit with a condition that, you know, puts a skill on the board. This is just a fast speed spell. It is super easy to manipulate the board to a state where this kills something huge, right? In the right deck. I don't know if that's Sion's deck. I don't know if Sion's deck will be able to take full advantage of this, but other Noxus decks would just love to have this. This is just a hugely powerful card. That's a really good card. Like, it's so easy to just, like, in an Ezreal deck, just, like, shoot down the little ones, and then, like, they play, like, they have a champion, you just, like, shoot down whatever little cards they have, and then play this, and just, like, eat a Leviathan? Like, that's so scary. That's such a scary card. Alright. Ancient Warmonger. 5 mana, 5 mana. 5 mana, 5/5 Overwhelm. We've seen this card earlier. When I'm discarded, grant your strongest ally +2/+0. And it's just a 5 mana 5/5 with Overwhelm. This is just a solid card. Just playing a 5 mana 5/5 with Overwhelm. I mean, that's solid. I don't know if it's good enough. Solid is not always good enough these days, right? Discarding it, obviously discarding it helps you level up Sion. Playing it helps you level up Sion. Interesting. So, let's keep reading. Let's keep reading. This card looks fine. I don't know if fine is good enough, right? 5/5 with Overwhelm is not quite enough stats. Let's keep going. Fallen Reckoner, 5 mana, 4/3, Overwhelm. When I'm summoned, grant can't block to the weakest enemy. Last breath, create a Risen Reckoner in hand, which is this. Last breath, create this in hand. Whoa. Which is a 3 mana, 6/3 with Overwhelm and Ephemeral. When I'm summoned, again, grant can't block to the weakest enemy. Grant can't block to the weakest enemy. Whoa. That's a really interesting effect. Grant can't block. And it's on the weakest enemy, and this seems to be a bit of an Overwhelm deck. Sion seems to be a bit of an Overwhelm strategy. So granting can't block to the weakest enemy in an Overwhelm deck, they probably weren't blocking for that much anyway. But this is really good. I don't know, just removing blockers like that sounds so good. Right, it depends on the board state. It depends on what deck you're going up against. But if you're going up against like a go hard deck and all their units are really weak, like this won't feel that great. But if you're going up against like a mid-range deck, like Ash, if you're going up against like an Ash Frostbites deck, if you play Fallen Reckoner and you know their Omen Hawk gets can't block, now they have to trade with something they care about, right? You're forcing them to block with their important units like Ash. Like the big Yetis. Of course, that deck runs lots of Frostbites, so like you don't want to do that, but still, still, the ability to take out the small things and make them irrelevant and force your opponent to trade with stuff that they don't want to trade with, that's really powerful. Now this is a 5 mana. This is 5 mana for a 4/3. And all it does is create a 3 mana 6/3 with Ephemeral. That doesn't seem great, right? 5 mana for a 4/3, even for that effect, can't block, doesn't seem too powerful. But in a deck where you need to discard cards, that can be pretty good, right? 5 mana, and then you create this in hand, and if you discard this, Sion goes, Sion levels by 6. Right? Sion gets 6 procs towards his level if you discard the Risen Reckoner. I think that's a really important card. This is probably a pretty important card for Sion decks, even if you don't ever want to play the Risen Reckoner. If you just use the Risen Reckoner as discard fodder, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. That's a good reason to put this in your deck. I like that. Alright, Fallen Rider. 2 mana, 3/1. Fearsome. Oh, Noxus is getting some fearsome cards. Fallen Rider. When I'm discarded, create a Risen Rider, which is this. Interesting. So, Fallen Reckoner is the card that you want to play, and then when it dies, it gives you discard fodder. And this is the opposite. Fallen Rider is the opposite. This is a card that starts as discard fodder, and if it gets discarded, you get a good card that you want to play. Which is a 2 mana 4/2 with Fearsome. Whew. Yep, that's a good card. This is some high quality discard fodder. This is like the best discard fodder we've seen yet, right? This is better than like Flame Chompers. Holy crap. Well, maybe not that good. Well, Flame Chompers is pretty good, but this is like comparable to like how good Flame Chompers is. It just puts another card in your hand. That's so good. That's so good. The problem that discard strategies have, surprisingly enough, is that they run out of cards, right? If you're playing stuff like Get Excited, if you're playing stuff like Time Winder, stuff like Draven's Axes, every time you play one card, you lose 2 cards out of your hand. But with stuff like Fallen Rider, with stuff like Fallen Reckoner, this archetype it has the tools to mitigate that problem, right? It has the tools to... Riot is giving it the tools to sort of combat that as they go, right? If you discard Fallen Rider, you get another card in your hand, so it's like you only lost 1 card instead of losing 2. And then the card you got is really, really good. That's awesome. This is really well designed. I like this. I like this so far. Wow, there's a lot of cards. Lost Soul, 8 mana 5/4. Well, I'm never playing that. When I'm summoned or discarded, create a Twin Blade Revenant in hand, which is this. Holy matrimony. He got half cost. 4 mana 4/3 challenger, last breath, create a Lost Soul in hand. Hold on. Wait a minute. Okay. So this is an 8 mana 5/4, right? Which means it's terrible. Which means I'm never playing this. However, it says when it's discarded, you get to create this in hand. Twin Blade Revenant. Which is a 4 mana 4/3 with Challenger, which is a decent card, right? Not like a crazy card, but a 4 mana 4/3 with Challenger. That's not bad. But it has Last Breath, create a Lost Soul. This is just an infinite... What? This is just... It just goes back and forth? You never run out of steam? You can discard Lost Soul, create Twin Blade, play Twin Blade, kill Twin Blade, get Lost Soul, discard Lost Soul, play Twin Blade? Forever? Potentially? Like, obviously you're not gonna do that. You're not gonna, like, loop that more than, like, once or twice in a game, but, like, wow! Yeah, like I was saying. That, like, literally like I was saying, this deck, with this card alone, this deck is capable of never running out of steam, even though they're discarding all the time. Wow. This card is great. Holy crap. I don't know if this card is like super powerful, but its design is amazing. It is exactly what this deck needs. Wow, I love this card. I actually love this card. This is fantastic. Okay, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going. Noble Rebel. 3 mana, 3/2, Overwhelm. Grant me +2/+1 once you've discarded 3 cards this game. Grant me +2/+1. Oh. Once you've discarded 3+ cards. So this is a 3 mana 5/3 with Overwhelm if you've discarded 3 cards. Okay. Alright, finally, we found a card that's not that good. Okay, wow, woo! Okay, I thought Sion was just gonna steamroll through this video, dude. Okay. Noble Rebel is not that good. 3 mana for a 5/3 with Overwhelm. I mean, yeah, that's a good card. But discarding 3 cards by round 3 sounds pretty difficult to me. Right? We can compare this to Crescent Guardian, right? We can compare this to Crescent Guardian. 3 mana for 5/3 with Overwhelm if you've met its condition. Crescent Guardian's condition is very easy. It's just Nightfall. Right? Noble Rebel's condition? Discard 3 cards this game? That's, you know what? This card still isn't that bad. Like, because you're probably not going to get this on round 3, right? So if you have this card and you play it on round 3, it probably won't be a 5/3, but if you play it on like round 5, depending on how your deck is built, it's kind of doable, right? Then the question becomes, is a 3 mana 5/3 with Overwhelm on round 5 still a good card? And the answer is kind of yes, right? The answer is kind of yes. That's still good even later. A lot of cards lose their value. A lot of cards, like, if you don't play them on curve, they start like diminishing in value and they're not as good because they're trading into, like, you know, they're being blocked. Like this is true of Merciless Hunter, sort of. It's actually not true of Merciless Hunter because of the vulnerable thing, but like a lot of units get less good if you don't play them on curve, and this is definitely one of them, but it doesn't fall off as hard as I thought it might. This card is actually still pretty decent. I don't know if it's gonna make the cut, but it's still decent. Oh my god, these are all decent cards. What the heck, Noxus? Alright. Reborn Grenadier. 1 mana 3/2 ephemeral. To play, discard a card. When I'm discarded, summon an exact copy of me. Holy crap! Wow. Okay, this card is terrible if you play it, but fantastic if you discard it. Oh my goodness gracious. You never want to play this card, I don't think. Well, don't say never. You usually don't want to play this card. But discarding it feels pretty good, right? You just get it. It's like Flame Chompers. You discard it and you get one. And it doesn't actually do the Flame Chompers thing, right? When you discard Flame Chompers, you don't summon a copy of it. You just put it on the field. But if you discard Reborn Grenadier, you progress Sion by 6, right? Because this really gets discarded, and then you summon another one, which means that you discarded 3 power, and you summoned 3 power, which means Sion gets progressed by 6. Yeah, this is gonna be a staple in Sion decks, I think. You're gonna have to run this in Sion decks. It's just good. It's good discard fodder. You can get this guy at burst speed, right? If you have a burst speed discard spell, like, I don't know, Draven Axes, right? If you have a Draven Axe, you discard this guy on the block, like your opponent attacks, you discard for 0 mana, you get this guy out and make a good trade. Holy matrimony, dude. That's really scary. Yeah, no, this is a pretty good card. No, yeah, that card's really good too. All right, let's keep going. Salt and Stitches. Focus. Is this Noxus's very first focus card? I think this is Noxus's very first focus speed card. All right. Focus. To play, discard a card. Summon a Reborn Grenadier and give it +2/+0 this round. I don't know about that one. Discard a card, summon a Reborn Grenadier and give it +2/+0. It's focus speed. So like, So like the obvious example of what you do with this card is you play this discarding a Reborn Grenadier to get another one, right? So at focus speed, you'll get 2 Reborn Grenadiers. One of them will be 5 attack, and then you attack with both of them, right? At focus speed, so your opponent can't get any blockers down. Okay. That sounds good. I mean, they're ephemeral, right? So this is the part where you need to... This is the part where you need to be taking out the weakest blockers. Because if you do that, if you Salt and Stitches and your opponent has like 2 1/1s on the board, you're going to feel very bad, right? You lost 2 cards. You lost 2 cards out of your hand, and mostly all you got was like killing 2 1/1s. However, if your opponent has bigger units than that, or if these hit Nexus, you're gonna be pretty happy, right? This card, I don't know about Salt and Stitches. Reborn Grenadier seems great. Salt and Stitches, I'm not sure about. We'll have to see exactly what speed. All right, so what I don't understand, what I'm not understanding right now about this deck is exactly what speed it wants to play at. There's probably gonna be a couple different versions of Sion. One that wants to play for like the beefy mid game, and one that wants to be just like straight aggro and come out swinging at the beginning, with Sion as like an in-case finisher, like a finisher in case you need it, but you probably won't use. Or maybe we'll just ditch Sion. Maybe the Salt and Stitches Reborn Grenadier deck just won't even run Sion. That's possible. But Salt and Stitches, I think, is a card that is very, very aggressive. But like Ancient Warmonger and Fallen Reckoner and Risen Reckoner, they seem less aggressive. They seem more mid-range. And I think they don't quite go in the same deck. So I'm sensing two different decks that play at two different speeds. That's what I'm sensing so far. All right. Grave Physician, 2 mana, 2/2. Play, discard a card to draw a unit. Okay, this is a Sump Dredger at 2 mana in Noxus. Seems great for this archetype. It is just a 2 mana, 2/2. But discard, but I was thinking Sump Dredger would be really good in this deck, right? Discard a card to draw a unit. That seems pretty good. It seems like what this archetype wants. You want to be like discarding Reborn Grenadier and replacing it in your hand. That seems like exactly what we want to do. We'll probably play this just because we want good discard effects or decent discard effects. And this is a decent discard effect. I think this is probably going to see play in the deck. It's not crazy. This card is not like crazy value or anything like that, but it is enough of what this deck wants that the mid-range one might play it anyway, but the aggressive one probably wouldn't. That's what I think. That's what I think about Grave Physician. All right. Last card. 8 mana, slow speed, Weapons of the Lost. Deal 3 to a unit and summon a Triferian Shield Breaker, which is the 5 mana, 6/5 with Fearsome from Noxus, right? So Weapons of the Lost is 8 mana, deal 3, and summon a 6/5 with Fearsome. Wow, okay. We did get... Alright, Noxus did get a card that sucks. Alright. Weapons of the Lost. We can kind of think of this as like a Tri-Beam Improbulator, right? You can sort of compare this card to Tri-Beam Improbulator. It will always work, right? Unlike Tri-Beam sometimes, like, if you draw it late, it's always like deal 1, get a 1/1, right? Which sucks. It costs 3 more mana than Tri-Beam, but its 2 effects are both consistent, whereas Tri-Beam sometimes does nothing or does exactly what you don't want it to do. Now, the 2 effects are, while they're consistent, they're going to be the same every time. They're not that great. This just deals 3. Which, I mean, in certain scenarios can be exactly what you want. Like, paying 8 mana to kill Ash isn't the worst thing in the world. Paying 8 mana to kill Ash and get a 6/5 with Fearsome... It's not the worst thing in the world. I don't think it's quite worth it. This is not quite worth 8 mana, I don't think. If it were 7, I think maybe we could consider it. I think maybe we could consider it if it were 7 mana. I think it's just that Triferian Shieldbreaker is not that good. Right? It's Triferian Shieldbreaker here. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. Shield Breaker. There it is. That is this card. This is Triferian Shieldbreaker. It's a 5 mana 6/5 with Fearsome. And it's been in the game since Foundations, right? Since beta, since alpha probably, this card has been in the game, available for you to put in your deck. We never have. Never once in the history of Legends of Runeterra has this card been competitively viable in Constructed. That I know of, anyway. And there's kind of a reason for that. It's just that Fearsome isn't that good on a mid-sized unit in Noxus. So like, oh, it's not bad. I mean, this has to be traded with something decent, but like at the end of the game, at like when you're strong enough to be playing, oops, when you're at the point where you can be playing 8 mana spells, I don't think a 6/5 with Fearsome is good enough. What if you play this on round 5? So this is the same mana point as Strength in Numbers, and I have a lot of experience playing Strength in Numbers, right? I played that card a lot. if you play Strength in Numbers on round 5, which you can do with 3 spell mana, it's really scary, but it takes up your entire mana and then you can't respond to anything. It's like, it's really risky. It was always like the riskiest part of playing the boys. You would play this, you'd be like, all right, it's time, we're going. You just slam it, you sit back, you're like, do you have an answer? Can you stop what I'm about to do? And you'd get your 2 Legion Marauders, and like if they couldn't answer it, you just attacked with both of them, and then they became like 6/5s, and then you just won the game from there. But if they answered it with like deny, then you just lose the game on the spot. I don't think this is worth that chance, right? And this is the same sort of problem. If you play this on round 5, or even if you do later, if they have deny, first of all, you just kind of lose the game. You kind of can't play an 8-mana slow speed spell ever, because, if anyone runs deny, you just get instantly killed. You can't come back from that tempo. If deny's not in the meta, and right now deny kind of isn't in the meta, right? If you're not that afraid of deny, it could be okay. I think this card could be okay, but I don't think we are going to put it in our decks. Like, there are certain scenarios where I can see that this card could be fine. But fine isn't good enough, and for 8 mana, I'm not putting an 8 mana slow speed spell that's fine in my deck. You better be busted if you cost 8 mana for me to put you in my deck. It's not terrible, but I need better than not terrible, I think, for an 8 mana slow speed spell. All right. So, Sion. Discard synergy. Overwhelm. Aggro midrange. It looks alright. Honestly, it looks okay. Sion himself? I mean, if you can get him level 2, he looks pretty good. Especially if you can get him level 2 in a meta where stuff like Vengeance and Ruination are around. Right? Well, I guess that's not true. In a meta where stuff like Will of Ionia isn't around, right? If you play Sion and he gets Will of Ionia, you are in a bad spot, right? That is a bad thing. If you play Sion and he gets Concussive Palms, that's also not great, but it's not the end of the world. Basically, Sion hates Ionia. He also obviously doesn't work if he gets hit by Mini-Morph, right? If you get Mini-Morphed or silenced, you're pretty sad because you lose Sion Returned. But I don't think the thing is, I don't think Sion's deck is depending very much on Sion. I think discarding Sion just to give something Overwhelm one time is not the end of the world, right? He kind of is okay with just being discarded and then like winning with the followers. Now, the followers obviously also don't much care for Concussive Palm and stuff. I think he's pretty good. I think Sion, he's a 7-mana champion, but he can be discarded, right? I think Sion's pretty good. He costs 7 mana, but in matchups where you don't feel like you can use him, you don't have to. You're not stuck with him, right? He's not going to be dead weight in your hand. You can discard him, maybe, and maybe draw a card with like Grave Physician, get value out of him once, which is, giving something Overwhelm. The thing is, that's just, I feel like discarding Sion just to grant one thing Overwhelm, I don't think that's good enough. I really wish this gave like +1/+1 and Overwhelm. Then maybe I would feel good. Maybe like on level 2, maybe like discarding level 1 Sion. Well, no, he never levels up until you play him, right? So that doesn't work. Sion himself looks okay, but his deck looks pretty scary, honestly. I think that's what I have to say. Is Sion himself looks alright, looks fine, but the deck he's in looks terrifying. A lot of these cards look really strong, especially these cards like Fallen Rider, Reborn Grenadier, and Lost Soul. These cards look really scary. Like These 3 cards right here, Fallen Rider, Reborn Grenadier, and Salt and Stitches, are going to be in some aggro deck, right? There's going to be an aggro deck that just uses the hell out of these. In fact, oh god, these cards are probably a massive buff to discard aggro, which I haven't even been talking about yet. Discard aggro just got Reborn Grenadier, which is not, which is a new card that they have access to now. I don't know if actually discard aggro wants this. They probably want that though. They probably want Salt and Stitches though. Oh god, I love Lost Soul as well. These cards look so cool. All right, Roar of the Slayer. Let's go through and give my secondary impressions. All right, Sion looks fine. His deck looks really scary. I don't know that Sion is gonna be like super powerful, but he looks fine. We got Roar of the Slayer, 3 mana, fast speed, to play, discard a card, kill the weakest enemy. I think this is such a strong control card, right? This is a card that, looks like it's released. It's that weird card that like switches your brain. It's released with a bunch of aggro mid-range cards, but this is not an aggro mid-range card. This is a control card. If you can put this in a deck that is really good at dealing with small units, this is going to be how you deal with a really big unit. And the fact that it's at fast speed is so strong. It just makes it so easy for you to like, heck, maybe this is what we need for like Freljord Noxus. This is the kind of card that Freljord Noxus was missing, right? People keep experimenting with like Swain Anivia, Swain Sejuani, like Swain decks in Freljord that like want to go big. And I think those decks keep running into a problem. Well, they run into several problems, but one of the problems that they run into is that they don't really have Freljord, and neither Freljord nor Noxus has really good ways of dealing with big units. It's just like Scorched Earth, right? You can play Scorched Earth, but that requires damaging the units some other way, which is like a 2-for-1, and you don't want to do that if you can avoid it. But Roar of the Slayer, I mean, you do have to discard a card, so this is also almost a 2-for-1. But you can build your deck so that you have discardables that you don't mind losing. And you don't have to jump through as many hoops, right? If you're playing Swain Sejuani and your opponent plays like a 6/6, it's gonna be hard for you to deal with that. But with this card, you can just play it, right? You can just play Roar of the Slayer, bye-bye 6/6, I don't care. Get it out of here, right? This is a really good card. This is a really good card. I'm not sure where its home is gonna end up, but I'm sure it's gonna be some sort of Noxus control tool. Alright, Ancient Warmonger. This is like the one card that we've seen so far. No. This is I'm not sure what to think of this card. It's 5 mana 5/5, which is fine stats, right? It's not great stats. 5 mana 5/5 is nothing special. And it gets Overwhelm, which is nice, but still nothing terribly special. But it also has the added flexibility of when it's discarded, it does something nice, right? When you discard Ancient Warmonger, you get something. You get +2 attack on your strongest ally. And if your strongest ally has Overwhelm, that's pretty good, right? And it levels Sion, right? Whether you play it or you discard it, it levels Sion by the same amount. This card seems fine. I don't know. I'm just not sure that this deck can afford to like drop 5 mana on one unit. Maybe it can. I'm having trouble visualizing this card. I'm having trouble visualizing playing this card and feeling good about it. It's like this card is only going to be good if it's bigger than everything on your opponent's board, right? This is the kind of card that like if you drop it and your opponent is sitting there with a board full of like 3/2s and 2/3s and a champion, they're gonna be like, wait, right? A lot like Ruin Runner. This card is just like Ruin Runner. If you're ahead, you love this card. If you're behind, this card doesn't feel as good. Although it does have 1 extra health, right? This is actually a 5 mana card with 5 health, unlike Ruin Runner, who only has 4 health and can't really block, right? If Ruin Runner ever blocks, she's just gonna die. Ancient Warmonger can block and still be, like, have a decent amount of health left over. It seems okay. It seems okay. It might not make the cut, but it doesn't seem bad. Fallen Reckoner looks better just because it puts something in your hand that you can then discard. And it makes can't block to the weakest enemy. I don't know how good this effect is, right? This card is so hard to judge because I don't know how good can't block to the weakest enemy is going to be. It seems alright. Even if the weakest enemy is really weak, even if this goes on like a spider, that's a spider that can't block you now, right? That spider was a problem for you, and that problem is gone. If this puts can't block on a strong enemy, you know, like a well, probably not a champion, but if this goes on something that like has a lot of health, then you took out something that was going to stop you from killing your opponent. This card seems really good. I think this card is really good, even though it is 5 mana for a 4/3. Right, that's bad stats. That's really bad stats for 5 mana. But I think this card is decent. Again, if you're ahead. I think what this deck is going to come down to is getting ahead in the early game and then pushing that advantage in the mid game, right? And this card does help with that. If you're ahead, this card can help you. If you're behind, this card is not that good. I think that's how this deck is going to function, is you need to get ahead in the early game and then push and then use cards like this to leverage that advantage. Cool. Fallen Rider looks sick. Fallen Rider is not like that. Fallen Rider is just a fantastic card. This isn't even limited to Sion decks. Anyone that discards is going to love this card, right? Any deck in the entire game that uses discard tools is going to slap like 3 of these in their deck. This card is nuts. Right? Discard aggro will probably enjoy this card. Oh god, I don't want discard aggro to have a 2 mana 4/2 with Fearsome. No, I don't want discard aggro to have that. Right? Oh my god. This is like, imagine Poro Cannon on this card, right? Round 2. You play Poro Cannon into Risen Rider. Better have a 3/2, right? You better have something that can block Fearsomes, my friend. Holy matrimony. Yeah, this card's terrifying. Terrifying. Lost Soul. I like Lost Soul, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be super competitive. This is definitely playing for that more mid-rangey style, right? Lost Soul is not going to show up in aggro decks. It's definitely a more mid-range style card. Right? If you're playing a mid-range Sion deck, and god, I want mid-range Sion to be good. That sounds so fun. If you're playing a mid-range style Sion deck, this card seems really strong. It literally, in theory, it literally lets you never run out of steam, as long as you have something that can discard, right? If you play Grave Physician on Lost Soul, you draw a card, and you draw a unit specifically, and then you put Twin Blade Revenant in your hand. And then you play Twin Blade Revenant, you challenge with it, it dies, you get another Lost Soul, you discard Lost Soul. Like, you can use this card to never run out of steam, and that is so incredibly powerful. I think this is a one of. I think this is at least a one of in Sion decks. It's so cool. I love this card. Again, I don't know if it'll actually be competitive. I don't know if the mid... Usually what tends to happen is like any deck that can play either aggro or mid-range tends to end up being more powerful if played aggro. So like, right? Turns out if you take out all the mid-range cards and just put in like the hyper-offensive aggro cards, those tend to do really well in this sort of, you know, historically that's just been true in Legends of Runeterra. So this guy might... Lost Soul might get lost. Lost to aggro. But that's okay. I love him anyway. Noble Rebel, 3 mana, 5/3 with Overwhelm. If you've discarded 3 cards a game. I'm having trouble evaluating this card as well because I can't tell how many cards, how fast we're going to be discarding cards. In the right deck, this can actually be terrifying. And that deck might be discard aggro. This is another card that might just be discard aggro upgrade. They didn't have very many good 3-drops anyway. It was just Draven, right? The discard aggro's only good 3-drop is Draven. And so this might be good. Then again, this might only be good if you already have Draven, right? In discard aggro, Poro Cannon plus Rummage will turn this on. Right? If you play this on round 3, you played a Poro Cannon on like round 2 or 1, and then like you attack and Rummage, this gets turned on. You don't generally want to play Rummage that early in the game. Yeah, that's the thing. I think even discard aggro will not be discarding that many cards that early in the game, right? You want this to be a 5-3 as fast as possible. Like Crescent Guardian, right? Crescent Guardian is usually on round 3. You play Crescent Guardian on round 3 and it's pretty good. I don't see this card being a 5-3 on round 3 very often, if ever. So I think it's quite not. I think it's not quite there. I think this card is not quite there. However, if discard aggro starts adding in like stuff like Salt and Stitches and like Grave Physician, then maybe it will become there, right? Then maybe they will have enough discard and they will just get this on round 3. I think if you can get this on round 3, it's fantastic. If you can't, it's not quite good enough. Reborn Grenadier is fantastic. This is probably going in discard aggro. It's definitely going in Sion decks. This card is nuts in Sion decks. Salt and Stitches is just a fantastic aggro card, especially when put alongside Reborn Grenadier. I don't know if Sion decks will be quite aggressive enough to want this, but some deck will, right? This is going to find its way into some sort of hyper offensive aggro deck with discard tools. It might be discard aggro, it might be Sion, it might be some other discard thing we haven't even seen yet, but this is a good card and it'll find a home somewhere. Grave Physician looks really good in Sion decks. And like also just sort of Noxus value decks, right? This is a card that is not limited to like Sion decks. It's not limited to like discard aggro style decks either. I'm probably gonna try to use this card the same way that I use Sump Dredger, right? In Ezreal Draven, which is just to turn axes into good cards. That's what this card like allows you to do. It allows you to discard primarily axes, right? You can discard an axe and draw a unit. That's always going to be strong. That's always going to be a good thing that you want to do. This guy is always going to have a home somewhere. And if Sion's good, he'll probably have multiple homes in multiple places. Just a solid card. Nothing too crazy. 2 mana 2/2, I think that's fair. If this guy was a 2 mana 2/3, I think he'd maybe be probably too strong. I think making this guy 2/2 is fair. This is a fair card, but it's the type of fair card that you're going to want in your deck, even though it's fair. I like this guy. I think he's pretty good. And then Weapons of the Lost, I don't think it's good enough to even consider running an 8 mana slow speed spell. Like this effect is kind of worth 8 mana, but slow speed spells at 8 mana they just open you up to too many things, right? They suck up like most of your mana. Your opponent knows that you're not going to have very many responses to what they're going to do. If they have Deny, you're just sad. I don't think you want to put this card in your deck if you can avoid it. It's not the worst card in the world, but 8 mana slow speed is just so hard to justify. It's just so vulnerable. It just leaves you open. All right. Those are my impressions. That's how I feel. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think of Sion? Do you think he's going to be busted? Do you think he's going to be mid-range? Do you think there's going to be an aggro deck that is capable of still running Sion and just like discarding him when they don't need it, and maybe he's like a finisher like Captain Farron? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to stop talking. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys next time.